Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the June 21st meeting of the Methacton School Board work session. Please rise for the pledge.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
In terms of announcements, I would like to announce an executive session. There was an executive session of the board on May 31st, 2016 for matters of contract negotiations with all labor groups. There was an executive session of the board on May 31st, 2016 for a matter of personnel regarding an administrative employee. There was an executive session of the Finance Committee of the board on June 15th, 2016 for a matter of personnel regarding an administrative employee. In terms of attendance, we have Ms. Reese, Ms. Hackett, myself. We have Mr. Roth, Mr. Winters, and Ms. Aubrey Larsenis. Mr. Dorn is on the phone. And I will turn it over to Dr. Zerbe.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. Before I get into the rest of the agenda, I just want to give the board and the public some information. At the May 24th school board meeting, a few individuals raised the topic of bullying. I want the board to know that those individuals were followed up with and that their concerns addressed. I also want the public to be assured that the district is committed to taking a proactive approach to prevent bullying and to cultivate resiliency for our students in all grades using evidence-based practices. Additionally, to ensure the safety of our students, the board encourages students who have been bullied or harassed to promptly report such incidents to a building administrator, teacher, counselor, or nurse so that the incident can be investigated promptly, and corrective action can be taken when allegations are substantiated. That last statement is part of our handbooks, and we encourage parents and students alike to do that. And that there ends my comment on the matter of bullying from last meeting. If we look at the agenda before us here this evening, I have no recognition of guests or speakers. There are no action items on the agenda for your consideration this evening. And reports will be, of course, provided at the voting meeting. But we do have several items under item 9. Which are those items which are a list of bills, the treasurer's report, the final budget adoption for 2016, which all three were reviewed at the Finance Committee this past week. And I know that Mr. Whiteleather has a couple other items in terms of depositories as well as taxes associated with the agenda. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Whiteleather.
Thank you, Dr. Zerbe. As Dr. Zerbe had indicated, we have a couple items on for your consideration. Obviously, our annual levy of taxes outside of our real estate tax, as listed in item D for your review and approval. There is no change in those rates as established from prior years. Under item E, we have our annual list of depositories, banks with whom we do business. All of those banks are existing to the Methacton School District, so there is no change reflected on that. Under item F, our annual and district insurances. These are everything outside of our employee coverage, medical, prescription, vision, etc. Just wanted to highlight workers' comp coverage result in a $54,000 decrease this year from the premium we paid current year to what we're going to be paying next year. This is a reflection of our claims experience decreasing over the last several years, so that was a nice benefit for us. It actually resulted in a significant decrease in our budget as proposed at current to the tune of $100,000. We realized a projected increase in that line item. Once we received the premium rates from the broker, we adjusted that rate. So between the decrease in over current premium and then obviously the removal of our proposed increase, that resulted in a $100,000 savings. And lastly, our homestead farmstead resolution. This is the resolution that is approved annually to distribute the gaming funds that the state distributes to school districts. The resolution was reviewed at our Finance Committee meeting and will be on for your consideration at next week's meeting. Thank you.
And Mr. Whiteleather, one of the items that we should go over with the committee here this evening is the update on the proposed final budget. We do have handouts before all the board members, and we also have handouts at the table in the back. It is attached to the agenda for the work session meeting, and Mr. Whiteleather, if you could take us through that, I'd appreciate it.
Sure, I'd be glad to. As was presented at our Finance Committee meeting last week, on the first page, we reflected where our budget stood as of January during our preliminary adoption at $106.8 million. From that point through when the board was asked to approve our proposed final budget at our May board meeting, you can see all the reflected reductions that impacted our budget between January and May, to the tune of slightly over $2 million reduction. Following that May board meeting, we had additional reductions to our budget, which include a additional professional retirement, which the board did approve at the last board meeting, replacement of 6 open custodial positions, a special ed position movement, which resulted in savings as listed there. And then lastly, as I reflected with our insurance renewals, we realized a $100,000 savings with that line item. On the flip side, the increases that were reflected in the budget as it currently stands is monies associated with the enrollment and capacity fee, as well as the high school schedule fee as proposed, which resulted between what was in the superintendent's budget and what is necessary to cover the anticipated cost. There was a $58,000 increase to that line item. So all in, based upon where we stand, or as we stood on June 15th, we were at $104,643,912. If you move to the second page, the same setup, but this is on the revenue side. Again, at the very top, where we were at with our January preliminary budget adoption. For sake of equalizing the budget to remove the tax increase that was proposed at the January preliminary budget, that resulted in that 6.74% tax increase. The dollars associated with that line item were removed. We also, over the last few months, had additional line items that reflected in increases to our revenue. The 2 items of note are the Act 1 tax increase that represents the 2.4% that is allowed as the maximum tax increase under that particular line item, as well as a partial use of the PSERS tax exception. You can see there's associated additional increases that impacted our revenues, resulting in the May proposed final budget of the $104.8 million. Additional line items that were affected between May and the June 15th Finance Committee meeting were based on the additional revenues coming into the district. We were able to reduce our PSERS tax exception. So the $653,000 use of the PSERS tax exemption has been reduced to approximately $500,000. So you can see the trade-off of those two, as well as the reduction in the PSERS, as well as FICA reimbursements that's associated with the employees' costs that are coming in less than what we had originally projected in the budget. So as you can see, the budget as it currently stands on the revenue side equals our expenditure side at $104.6 million. On the final slide, final page, at the very top, just showing the updated revenues and updated expenditures, resulting zero difference between the two figures. Our current real estate tax rate is 27.9 mils. Our updated proposed millage rate, reflective of the changes that have occurred since the May proposed final, It's at 28.77 mils. I put just notation next to that where we were at our May proposed final budget adoption at 28.83. Just below that, I broke the tax increase into two separate sections. One is reflecting the Act 1 tax increase on the average homeowner, which is assessed at just over $180,000, as well as how much would be in the PSERS exception at $36. So in total, our real estate tax is projected to, is planned to increase 3.13% for your consideration next week, or $157.26. As you can see, again, this is a notation of $11.57 decrease from the May proposed final budget. And at the very bottom, just to give you a very high-level show of how a tax bill is calculated versus the millage, proposed millage increase. So if you just take the tax rate increase of 0.87 mils, you multiply that times the home's assessment, and then you divide that number by 1,000, that equals your tax increase. And I just provided several line items of illustration to just show somebody who would say, well, what is my house is assessed at $200,000, what would my increase be all the way up to $1 million assessment as well. And that concludes the presentation that was provided, as well as the updated information that was provided to Finance Committee.
Are there any questions on any of the items under Section 9 of the agenda?
I just had a quick question. Sorry about that. The fund balance for the roof, for the Montco roof, we're taking that out of capital or general fund balance? Where we can take that?
It would be coming out of the general fund.
And then how much out of the general fund balance are we using to balance the budget?
For 16-17, we're projecting to use nothing at this point.
Okay. With the exception of that 67,000.
Correct.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Any other questions on any of the items under Area 9?
Yeah, on the budget, we have one more week before the final vote, and do you have any expectations that there may be some further reductions in expenditures between now and then?
We are taking donations, so I can write you down for a few bucks.
No,
That's revenue. I'm asking about expenditures right now.
Point well taken. I think it's important to know that we've been working, as you can see here, and what we presented at the Finance Committee meeting, we're trying to find multiple ways to help reduce the expenditures. So it's quite possible that we may come before you next week with a different number, hopefully lower than the tax increase we're currently recommending.
Thank you. And just a small reminder, we're probably not going to see Mr. Whiteleather beyond next Tuesday's meeting. So his position will be vacant come the beginning of the year. I wonder if there might be that and other positions where we could estimate lower salaries for the beginning of next year as a way of reducing expenditures. Sorry, but that's the reason.
Yeah, we currently, well, certainly one could do that. The challenge is we are filling his position in an interim basis, and that is not technically budgeted, so the money we would typically have spent on the salaried person for the for his immediate replacement is likely going to be the money that we use to deal with the interim.
Okay, and to move to the revenue side, occasionally I'll make a contribution, but not at this moment. we discussed at a great length at the Finance Committee meeting the Shannondale expected new properties that will be coming online shortly. And I just wondered if any more consideration or information has been received concerning those that might affect our total revenues projected. I noticed that the actual form says on it, revenues estimated to be received. And does this mean we are not estimating it at all?
As I explained at the Finance Committee meeting, we receive a monthly assessment report from the county for both Lower Providence and Worcester that reflects the total assessment as well as any changes plus or minus. The basis for which to include additional properties, in this case Shannondale, is not reflected on that report as of yet. And unless there would be a decision otherwise by majority vote of the board, historically speaking, it's been the practice that the district wouldn't include a property until it's on the tax roll. Due to a number of reasons, one being the value of the property versus what we would assume when the property would come on the tax rolls. There's a number of potential assessment appeals for the property. So there are a number of situations that would occur with respect to a property coming on the tax rolls that would lead me to recommend to the board that we would not anticipate any revenue from a property until it comes onto the tax rolls because of so many variables that can readily impact the budget in a negative way. If we put in revenue that does not become reality, that hole needs to be made up. And it would be, again, my recommendation not to utilize a property that has not been placed on the tax rolls to calculate a value of tax coming in from that.
Any other questions?
Just real quick, Stuart. If you take Shannondale out of the equation, do you assume any percentage increase for the base assessed value for Methacton year to year? So you get I guess you got the last report in the end of May, correct? And we won't get June's before the budget gets passed. But do you put in any percentage based off of the total assessed value for Methacton, like a 1% change, or do we use the last report?
For preparing the budget, I use the report. For projection modeling, I will assume some, but for preparing the budget, I use what is actually provided by the county.
And I just want to say thank you for including that last section there for the home assessed calculation. I know Mr. Phillips had asked to get a little bit more clarification for the public so that they could see what the tax increase was. So thank you for including that.
Kim?
I was going to ask Scott.
I actually have a couple of questions about the list of bills, if that's okay. I noticed that there are a few different payments for tuition to other public school districts in the Commonwealth, and I was wondering if you could clarify what those are for.
When we have special ed children that are placed at other educational institutions, we are charged a tuition bill, which we remit to them. It's in a case where we would not have the program or services offered that another school district would. The child that receives the education services there through special education would then charge tuition bill to Methacton. Methacton would then remit the bill for that service or those services.
So these are students that live in the Methacton School District. Because some of these districts that we're paying tuition to are well outside of our area, in particular Grove City, which is clear on the other side of the state, and Twin Valley, which is out past Morgantown. So I'm wondering how that works. I don't see a student commuting or being transported to those schools, so I'm wondering what that's for.
Depending on the specialized service that's provided to that child, there may be very few schools across the Commonwealth that offer that service or services to that child. So depending on where that particular program is offered, it can be in a situation where, like Grove City, which is several hours away from here, as well as any really school district, depending upon, again, highly specialized needs children can be realistically placed at any school across the Commonwealth that would offer a program which would most benefit that child.
And then one other question. I noticed that we paid, it looks like in excess of $6,000 to advertise jobs in print newspapers, and I'm wondering if that is the way that we typically advertise jobs, and if that's the most judicious way to do it. It
I'm
seems.
going to ask Mr. Harney to chime in there. Thanks.
We try to cover both print and electronic and Monster and all those things, and a lot of the ads now through Monster and those things are funneled through, say, the Philadelphia Inquirer Group. So they're package deals when we do those. It is something that we have always done and we continue to do, but the advertising is usually a package of both print and coverage on several other online mediums with each group. And we tried to extend our reach this second time around, going a little farther out to grab some attention. The papers are still utilized by a lot of people to look for jobs, even though the trend is obviously online, but the papers are still, from everything that we've seen, an active source for us.
Any other questions on Section 9 of the agenda?
Just one. I hate to say this because I'm not 100%, but I think this Grove City question came up before, and it was related to somebody that was in jail. I think a student that was in jail, and we have to pay that school district, just for clarification.
Yeah, that could be certainly the case. I mean, Brenda, you had another question?
Yes, I just wondered if you could tell us about these taxes, the per capita tax of $5 for Lower Providence and $10 for Worcester under 511, and then 5 and 5 under Act 679. What is the difference? Are they all billed on the same bill? Do the same people get billed for those things?
Yes, the per capita bill is all in one bill. It's just the breakdown between being an Act 511 tax or an Act 679. We share with the municipalities a level of taxation under these programs. So a matter of distribution of funds that would apply to the township as well would apply to the Methacton School District. As another example, EIT tax is shared 50-50 between a municipality and the school district. So all these the per capita taxes are reflected on a single bill. The distribution of those funds is between the municipality of residence for the individual as well as the school district.
Any last questions? If not? Oh, Mr. Dorn, do you have any questions on Section 9 of the agenda under Finance?
No, I don't. I was on mute. I wanted to take that and take it off mute.
Moving on to the next item, item 10, personnel items. Mr. Harney?
Yes, for your consideration next week, we have a professional resignation. We have a classified resignation. As you can see, we have two placeholders there for principal positions that we are still in the middle of working through the hiring process. We have 6 employment summer temporary help. Those are 2 for technology and 4 for custodial. Those are historically annually filled by students. We have 4 change of status professionals. Those often come from these domino effects that you've read about in some of the reports that we've been giving you. When there's open positions, our professional staff get a chance to apply for those and move to those, which creates a lot of movement. So there'll probably be several more of those as we go into next week. We have 2 change of status. I'm sorry, I got those out of order. The change of status professional are the 2 folks that we are continuing on this year to assist with the math implementation. And the third piece that goes to that is Elizabeth Kozak. She's filling in for one of those. So those 1, 2, and 3 are all tied together. And Krista Wagner is a move from .5 kindergarten at Worcester to Audubon. And now, we're talking about the domino effect, we're going to see more of those coming next week. And you'll see that when we go through advisements. Change of status classified, we have 2 for your approval next week. We have 2 uncompensated leave professional for your approval next week, 2 uncompensated leave classified. And we have 3 groups of supplemental contracts for your approval next week. We have extended season pay for our coaching staff. We have extended school year program staff list of supplemental contracts, and we have our summer program Jumpstart personnel for your approval this week as well, and our list of volunteers, and again, the advisements of folks that are moving just within the professional realm to different positions.
Thank you, Mr. Harney. I just want to bring the board's attention to item 10C, which is employment and administrative. As you can see, that we anticipate to be bringing 2 names and these recommendations forward for your consideration at the next Tuesday's meeting. We're likely to be completed with the process in about a day or 2. There's still some typical HR background check information that needs to be conducted before we can bring that name forward. But I do want to tell you that the process, Mr. Harney did a good job of organizing the process around how we were to select. We received many applications for both principal positions. They were screened, and then there were cabinet level interviews. Typically between 11 and 15 people were interviewed by the cabinet for both of the positions. We brought back a number of candidates in terms of our COLA. We brought back 5 candidates to be considered by a committee, by 3 committees, I'm sorry, a parent committee, an administrative team committee, and a teacher committee. And they provided input to us. We also included writing samples for that process as well. So we think that we did a thorough job in trying to articulate and to get the input from others as to who would be the best candidate to bring forward for your consideration. So I just wanted to make you aware of that. But on a not so happy note, we are re-advertising for the position of Director of Business Services. Just so you know, we did have the initial round of interviews, and we did not find an appropriate candidate to bring forward for the second round. And therefore, we re-advertise, which is likely part of some of the costs that you have seen. So it includes certainly 3 advertisements for the initial positions and an additional advertisement for the director position. But we do have an interim that's been on site at least one day at this point, is scheduled for maybe another day or 2 prior to Mr. Whiteleather's leave, and we hope that we'll be able to introduce him to the Finance Committee as well as the board in the very near future. Any other questions on item area 10 of the agenda?
I did. I noticed, based on a couple different places, it looks like there's 2 new, not new to Methacton, grade 4 instructors at Audubon. Is that, but I didn't notice any other movements, so I was just curious about that. It looks like one person is being switched from part-time to full-time under change of status, and then one is moving from Eagleville to Audubon. So is that, I didn't notice anybody had left. Do we have additional?
We had a retirement in 4th grade. Lynn Jennings retired.
Okay.
And we had an increase in that grade level. We offered that first to the teachers in the building. Nobody took that position, so we actually moved the position from a lower grade to do that. So it was a transition within the building to handle increased enrollment.
And then I also just, is this for the future, I noticed 2 people, for good reason, are leaving 6th grade science. So are we applying for are we advertising for those or moving people around? Is that part of your domino effect?
That's exactly what it is. We have to repost then when a position becomes available. We let the current professional staff show interest in that. If we don't hire from within, then that gets put to the outside, and we will look for outside people to fill that.
And then one more, and I think I know the answer, but for the lists for extended school year and for the Kinder Jump Start program, a couple of the people are STS employees. I would assume there are also STS employees during they were part of the STS employees via Methacton this school, the 2015-16.
Yeah, there were 3 positions that we were unable to fill with our in-house teaching staff, so we did utilize STS, and those are 3 people that have worked with our district before.
Any other questions? Kim?
For the employment administrative, the new principals at Arcola and Woodland, I know you said you anticipate having those names in the next day or two. I would ask that those be updated on the agenda online and disseminated as soon as they are available, so that we're all aware heading into next week's meeting.
Yeah, we'll most certainly have them on the agenda 72 hours in advance of as we typically would with all these items. I just wanted to make sure, and the reason they're on this work session agenda without the names is I wanted to make sure that, the board knew as well as the public knows that we'd like to be able to bring those names forward. We've got to get a couple of things done before we can do that, but we want to get that moving so that we, in cases where we have to make a longer transition than we would like, we can get those people on board and help us with scheduling and all the kind of stuff that needs to get done during the summer. So as soon as we can.
Yeah. 2 quick questions. One on item A, and they're sort of related questions. Is there any potential efficiencies with this resignation at the Arrowhead Elementary with sharing among other schools, or is this a replacement position going forward?
Right now, in consultation with Dr. Angstedt, that's going to be a replacement position. We've posted it as such. It's a full-time speech pathologist position that we look to fill.
Okay. And then also, I think the 6th grade class was a bubble class. So to Andrea's point, there's some teachers moving around. Or do we have some attrition in the 6th grade moving throughout the school district because of the bubble class?
There were several adjustments to the staff, both 5th and 6th grade, this year due to resignations and some openings that we had due to retirements. So the overall, the positions are down at Skyview by 3 positions. Was that your question? I'm sorry. Okay.
So I actually have a piggyback question to that. So we are anticipating 3 less professional staff at Skyview.
There's 3 less positions, that's correct. And we did some, Melissa Gorley did some adjusting to the schedules to try to maintain the size of the teams in 6th grade, and that was able to be done. And there was very little impact to 5th grade due to the enrollment as well.
Any other questions? If not, let's move on to the next item. And we're on to item 11, which is curriculum and programs. Dr. Katona?
Okay, the item that will be brought to you next week for approval is for approving the curriculum for 7th and 8th grade family and consumer science classes and 7th and 8th grade technical education classes.
Are there any questions on any of these items? And Dr. Katona, they were brought before the Education Committee and recommended to move forward. Is that accurate?
Yes, that is.
Any questions?
Yeah, I have one quick question. Overall, looking at the 2, curriculums, Tech Ed and FCS, what is the overall big picture of changing from what we have now to what you're offering? So in other words, you have these curriculums now, right, or no?
This is the curriculum that they're currently using.
That they're currently using?
And that they will continue using.
What did you change anything in that curriculum?
No.
Okay. Now...
Not recently.
Yeah, let me, Mr. Roth.
Then my point, why are we going through this?
That's what I wanted to explain. So when Dr. Katona arrived here in Methacton, we were we were out of sync in cycles of getting plan program approved. As per policy, we need to bring these programs before the board for approval. So while we may be already doing these things, because of the absence of a director of curriculum for a period of time, those things weren't brought forward. They are now, and over the last several months, she's brought programs forward that the work was done by our teaching staff and reviewed by Dr. Katona, and now they're being brought forward. So it is behind, but it is something that we would expect the board to understand that, you know, we've had some challenges with not having a director in place for some time, and the curriculum cycle being out of sync. So we've gotten that in place now. Dr. Katona has a handle on where we're going with it, and we'd like to have you consider these items for approval.
Okay. What I'd like to see then on these curriculums is if there's any changes, or if they're being just basically rubber stamped on through. This is what we're doing now. This is just formality. We've reviewed them. Everything is good. This is current. We don't need to make any changes to the curriculum, or we're not recommending any changes. Okay? So then that way, you know, if it's something that's in other words, my time looking into this, if it's something, hey, look, we need to make these changes on here, then I should spend more time into looking into that to see why we're making those changes. Just so I know, so I can better understand the curriculum itself.
That's a fair request, and I agree, and we'll make those. The only time that you won't see those is if it's 60-80% revised curriculum, where it would be more red than.
Oh yeah.
And so, but in the same instance, we should duly note that's what we did, and that's why we are doing it.
Okay.
And Dr. Katona, do you have anything to add for that?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, and that's a good question, and when we had our Ed Committee meeting, I did make mention of this with the tech ed curriculum. That is something that, since I've been here, has been reworked, because they have worked it so that it's more connected with STEM, STEM activities. And so that is something that really has been updated over the last year and a half. And I've been working closely with them on that, but I will certainly make you aware of any major changes as we move forward.
Great. Thank you.
Any other questions on item 11? If not, we'll move on to item 12, policy. Policy committee met this evening. There will be several policies that will be before you on Tuesday for first reading, but for second reading, which will require your approval, there are several policies. Are there any questions on the policies as they're listed here this evening? If not, we'll move on to the next item, which is item 13, gifts and donations. We have two gifts here to accept a gift of $2,500 from St. Andrew's Evangelical Church. We also have, for the backpack program, we also have a gift for a Dash and Dot robot pack for Arrowhead from Arrowhead Home and School at a value of $279.99. In addition, we have a trip to approve the Methacton High School cheerleaders to the NCAA cheerleading camp in Frederick, Maryland, August 18th through the 20th, no cost to the district. Any questions on item 13?
Just a real quick question, not necessarily about these, but in terms of our general gifts and donations, we normally list the dollar values of, donations to us. Do we keep track of in-kind donations as well? Do we try to value any of that? Like for the backpack program, if someone comes with a truck full of food, do they get the recognition in here? And do we put a value to that? Or how do we deal with in-kind donations?
We've done in-kind donations before, but we don't always get those values from the people that provide those in-kind. So we can't submit what we believe to be the value of their time and whatever they're bringing forward. But we do get in-kind donations, and when they fill the form out, we then can bring it to the board properly.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda, dates for board members' calendars are listed there. And I just want to make mention that we made some decisions here this evening with the policy committee that we were continuing a meeting to July 7th at 6:30 at the Farina Building, as well as we're looking to put July 19th and August 16th into an advertisement to schedule those meetings, because we agree that there's a significant number of policies that are going to require our time over the summer. And on item 15, board goals, I'll turn that over to Mr. Ryan.
Okay, the board members should have received some updated and revised board goals from Mr. Boardman during the week. He has received some feedback with that. We would like to have this item put on the agenda, so if there are any final thoughts or recommendations for that, please make sure that we get back to him within the next couple of days so that we can have this officially put on the agenda for next week. Okay. Does anyone have any questions now that we want to talk about? No. Okay.
And then we have courtesy of the floor. Oh, I'm sorry, is there any new business for consideration here this evening? If not, courtesy of the floor.
Courtesy of the floor, please. Yeah.
Joe Bickelman from Audubon. I just want to thank the board for getting the district's annual financial report, the PDE 2057, online. It's a lot of useful information. It shows all the actual amounts for salaries, benefits, and things like that, down to the object areas, across function areas, and it lets you, see how much debt is outstanding and things. So it's a nice document to have online. I have a question about bus routing. The district has a transportation director, Mr. Laws. Is he going to be doing the routing for the 16-17 school year? Or is First Student going to do the routing? Or is Bus Boss Software Company going to do the routing? Or is the current transportation consultant that we have on board, we have a transportation consultant that we're paying for, is he going to do the routing? What's the plan for 16-17?
The plan for 16-17 is Mr. Laws is the individual for the district responsible for routing. We are getting assistance from a couple other entities, specifically under the guidance of Mr. Harney and the committee that he's put together, that is also comprised of the consultant, which we've also reached out to Bus Boss to get some of their input. So it's a combination of many of those things that are going to be used to make the routing the most effective for the district. However, Mr. Laws is the individual for the district responsible.
So contacting Bus Boss to help with the routing is going to come with a cost, I assume. And the transportation consulting comes with a cost. We have yet to pay him any money. There's no check on the bills list yet for Mr. Bob Schock, who is the transportation consultant for the district. Somebody has to sit down there in front of the computer and actually route the kids, and I just was wondering if it was going to be Bob Laws or somebody else. So it's going to be Bob Laws, right?
Bob Laws is responsible for routing in the district.
Will he subcontract the work out to anyone?
Not under my watch.
No? Okay. The other thing I had, my wife, the last day of school, the Monday, my wife drives an 84-passenger bus and took in one student to the high school. And other buses came in with no students or one student or very few students coming in for the last day of school. And she took no students home. And other buses were practically empty that day too. And then I'm looking at the calendar and I see, the Flex-In service, which is the Tuesday after Memorial Day. Why can't that Tuesday be an instruction day? And it's critical, the finals are coming up, teachers can review material coming into the finals for the first and second week of June, and you have this last day of school, which is a Monday, where no one's showing up, when it could be an education day, the Tuesday after Memorial Day, or even the Friday before Memorial Day. I mean, that's at critical times of the year when the kids are hammering out material, and they're just, it would be good for the kids to have education on those days. So she told me that, and I says, I looked at the calendar, I says, well, Why don't you just switch to 2 days, you know, and have a constructive day the day after Labor Day? That was just my thought on that. What's the projected fund balance for June 30, 2016? General fund.
We reported at the Finance Committee meeting that we're in the process of calculating that and providing the estimate to the board.
I mean, we only have 2 weeks to go, right? Till June 30th. We only have to project 2 weeks of whatever, expenditures and revenues. You don't know what that is?
I think that's accurate, 2 weeks.
You don't know what it is? The projected fund balance for June 30, 2016 is?
I'm just going to jump in for one thing. One of the things which, and Mr. Whiteleather, please let me know if I'm off on this, but one of the big things that's still out there is we still haven't received any of our Plan-Con money for this current year, right? 2015, 2016.
Yeah, you just set up a receivable and recognize it as a revenue.
Well, go ahead.
We haven't provided that information to the board yet, and when we provide it to the board, we certainly will provide that same information to the public.
I did estimates from January on, projected the fund balance for the end of the year on June 30th. From January on, January you get a projection for June 30th, February you get a projection for June 30th, March you get a projection for June 30th. You know, and any variances are explained along the way, but you don't know what the projected fund balance is for 2 weeks from now. The other thing I saw in the newspaper that the Perkiomen Valley School District approved a 3-year tentative agreement with the teacher's contract. And in the article, it didn't give any details of that 3-year agreement, but it did say that the teachers' salaries were frozen for 13-14 and 14-15, and they received a step increase for 15-16. So, you know, we got rid of the bus drivers, but everybody got raises. We got rid of the food service ladies, but everybody got raises. It seems like those things would dictate freezes for the remaining staff. But, you know, and you call around to see what other districts are doing, apparently nobody called PV for the last contract. The medical benefits, the amount of money that the teachers pay for their medical benefits is 16% for 15-16. And that's a neighboring school district. That's for 15-16. 16% they're paying. So they had 2 freezes, 13-14 and 14-15, and only a step increase for 15-16. And they're paying 16% for their benefits in 15-16. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Candy?
Candy Alaba, Eagleville. I have a question. Since we're still taking donations on the snack backpack program, is that being carried on through the summer? Because the reason I ask is I just happened to see a news story yesterday about another school district that is continuing their breakfast and lunch program through the summer because a lot of their students who receive the free meals during the school year may go hungry during the summer, and the person talking about it made a point of saying it did not necessarily mean their students were poor. It meant that because of the economy, their parents have to choose between paying their mortgage and buying a lot of food for their children. And they were continuing this through the summer. And I was just curious if Methacton has thought about doing that, because I'm sure you're aware of the children that benefited from the program this school year.
The program is not operating during the summer, but you did ask if we were receiving donations. We'll certainly take monetary donations, but not necessarily product donations, because then we would have to keep the product for the summer. Okay. But we were starting the program up in September for our district schools.
I mean, don't you think this is something we should look into if we were concerned about them during the school year? That because this summer it might be extra, you might have more children come September once the tax bills go out. Because if we have students whose families are struggling this year, it's going to be worse next year. And I think, you know, once school closes, they're kind of like kicked to the curb. And I looked into it, and there's a large number of school districts who feel the necessity to continue these programs because the children are caught between a rock and a hard place. And like the gentleman said, it doesn't mean they're poor in a poor area of a city. These are children whose families are struggling economically. So I think since we're so great at spending money on everything else, this is something we need to look into to make sure our students are taken care of, to make sure the parents don't lose their homes, because then we lose students. But I think it would be beneficial if you just looked into it, since we're concerned they eat during the school year. Summer is important too. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Brian Earnshaw, Lower Providence. First, two things on the budget. I think I've said this before, but I think you should include some revenue for those Shannondale properties. They weren't built to be left vacant, so there's probably a way to find out when they're going to come online and put a conservative estimate in the budget for additional revenues out of that. If you end up being short, I believe you still have a $200,000 general reserve in the budget. That's just sitting there for things like budget errors, which this could be considered if it doesn't come online. And then a question regarding the tuition amount, which I believe is a little over $400,000, the last detailed slide I saw. Does that include tuition for the administrative staff as well as the professional faculty? I was looking for a presentation a couple meetings ago. I don't think it was in today's, no. That level of detail wasn't there. It was about $405,000 or so.
In a previous
It was in a previous presentation where you provided a lot of details of expenditure components.
There were significant reductions in administrative tuition reimbursement. That was one of the line items.
But that line item would encompass administrative as well as teachers and...
No, it doesn't. No, it was administrative only. Is that correct? Yeah.
That's administrative only, so that doesn't include any of the teaching staff.
That's accurate.
So it's $400,000 for administrators.
If that's what there was a significant reduction.
Oh, the reduction for administrators, right, but I'm just trying to get a sense of what's in that number. Is it all-encompassing for the entire district?
Can I actually think I had the presentation here, or at least maybe an updated one, for the staff tuition number, and this number might have changed since then, but it was a total of $305,000 for the district, $230,000 was listed for the teachers, and $75,000 for the administration.
Okay, so that is all-encompassing then. And is that number only tuition, or does it include, well, I guess first, does the district reimburse any travel expenses that may be associated with classes that are taken? That's just solely tuition. Okay. And then a couple questions on the list of bills. There was $7,500 for budget model advisory services, I think to PFM. Do you have any details on what that was?
It was requested that we contract with PFM to assist us in generating a budget model to better predict future budgeting process going forward.
So that would be used in like next year's budget preparation process?
It's
Okay.
to be used administratively and then in conversations with the board to address matters associated with the budget and/or staffing and so forth.
Okay. And then there were two payments to a John E. Bennett totaling a little over $1,800. It says school board and game MGR, which I guess is manager. If you have any information on that, or if not, I mean, if you get it for next week, that would be fine as well.
Our athletic office hires game day managers when we have multiple games on location on site to go around making sure, because the athletic director can't be at every game and every site.
Okay.
So they hire game day managers, and that, I'm assuming, I know that he is our game day manager, and you said that's the line item. That's got to be the bill for probably, I don't know how long, but we can find out for you.
Okay, so then two follow-up questions then. Is any of that expense incurred because the district's AD serves as a coach for one of the high school teams?
That's a year-round cost. It's fall, winter, and spring that they hire game day managers, so I can't say.
But is the cost in the spring any higher since?
I can't answer that question.
Okay. And is this individual related to any employee in the district? And if so, how is his rate determined?
How is the rate determined?
Yeah, if he's related to anybody who works in the district.
There's no relation to rate and an employee being related to anyone in the school district. We'll have to get that information on the rate for the game day managers, but the game day manager rate is set, I believe.
Okay. All right. That was all. Thank you.
Mr. Henshaw, if you would, please, could you send me an email with the question specifically to that so that we can accurately respond?
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Mr. Andrews?
John Andrews, Lower Providence. Relative to the budget, I want to bring it to your attention that in the different financial papers, reference is made to the fact that we're 6 years past the end of the Great Recession, and that there's growing risk of a new recession that shows up in trucking company reports. It shows up in the testimony of Janet Yellen in Congress this week. It shows up in a number of other places. So the risk of recession in the near term is rising, but it's still uncertain. And you all are aware of the slow recovery. The number of jobs created in recent months is way down. Maybe something like the Brexit, if it gives some surprises there. So, I mentioned that the economy is not booming because the budget needs to be realistic. You don't want to have a budget that causes another, let's say, 20 or 30 foreclosures. Relative to other people's comments, thoughtful comments relative to recognizing assessments for new buildings coming online at Shannondale, every year there's one revenue item called interim real estate taxes. It seems to me that would be the place where, if the Board of Assessments came through and said, hey, you've got a new outfit to bill for taxes starting in August or whatever, that would be recognized in the budget as an interim tax receipt. Is that correct? All right. So you say that is correct. And, I think also with regard to these buildings that are coming online, there's a matter of trust. And relative to the architect's report on repairs and primarily repairs that are recommended over the next 10 years, totaling up to $92 million. That kind of a situation, we don't want to have roofs falling in. So this, I would fully expect a recommendation to repair such and such a roof. And if in a 3-year period coming up near term, we're recommending a bond issue of, let's say, $20 million. If the resulting tax increase for that year goes over the index, that bond issue only goes forward if there is a successful referendum. And many referendums for financing of school districts in the Commonwealth are unsuccessful. And oftentimes they're unsuccessful because the taxpayers don't have trust in the school district. So I think that another reason to recognize the Shannondale situation, which perhaps will be $400,000 of additional tax revenue in the coming year, another reason to recognize that is the matter of trust and transparency with the taxpayers. And relative, again, to the repair issues, recommendations of the architect, the draft report, a very thick report, was received in April, and I seem to recall that it wasn't that many months ago that the district would be making comments on that back to the architect and then getting a final report copy. And, I'd like to hear something before too long from the administration, perhaps the director of facilities, as to what are the near-term items, what are the far-term items, what are the nice things, what are the mandatory things, a plan for responding to the architect's evaluations and recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing that there's no one else, can I get a motion to adjourn, please? Mr. Roth, seconded by Mr. Winters. Thank you very much. Have a nice night, everyone.